And I said to him, I have $1.50. And he said, that'll work. And as I walked away, I feel ashamed to tell this story. As I walked away, he didn't say thank you. Now that's a mortal sin if you're from the South like me. Like, we don't play much about manners, okay, and honoring people out of habit, not heart. If you missed that, it's already gone. So when I sat in my car, I was thinking back. I was like, wow, he didn't even say thank you. God immediately convicted me. When I had that thought, I didn't even say it out loud. I had the thought, God immediately convicted me. He said, why do you need him to tell you thank you?
Love is a high-risk behavior.
Last season, I had an episode early on, linked below, on Gary Chapman's 5 love languages. They have become part of regular dating culture lingo and have helped many people in their ability to have long-lasting and fulfilling relationships with romantic partners, family, and friends. One of the love languages that is actually more towards the bottom of my list of needs is receiving gifts, but I know it is a top for many people. Receiving gifts undoubtedly is a favorite pastime of mine from childhood. I have countless memories of a surplus of gifts as my parents both communicate through acts of service by gifting, not just to my siblings and I, but to a lot of people. We as children and still now have been so fortunate to have parents that were able to do and give in the way that they did. And I think that all of us have sort of outgrown this strong desire to receive gifts because, quite frankly, I think we've been satiated. I'm not sure when that switch happened, but I do remember just not being as interested in receiving gifts as being able to give my family gifts for holidays and celebrations. I love to curate the experience of them opening a gift from me, especially with my nieces being as many as they are. And I love to just see the joy of them opening a gift from me. It's almost as if I outgrew the need to receive and grew into the need to give. When I was in my early 20s, I noticed my mom being incredibly slow to open gifts from us. I mean, she would literally take forever. One year, she didn't even open her Christmas gifts until Valentine's Day of the following year, and that was by force. She did not even want to open these gifts. She didn't care about them. It was almost as if she had reached this level of satiation with gifts. And perhaps that's the same of what I was feeling. It's now so much sweeter for me to experience the act of giving and to satisfy others' desire to feel special and to feel rewarded and appreciated through their existence through gift giving than it is to receive for myself. After all, that's what gifts are for, right? It's an honoring for one's personhood and their presence in our lives. And it makes me think about the wise men who came to the manger of Jesus bearing gifts of frankincense and gold and myrrh, gifts that a baby could not use in that moment, but were an expression of appreciation for his prophetic personhood on this earth. And I need to do an aside study on the gifts because in writing the script for this, I was astounded by the purpose of those 3 gifts and the different meanings and prophecy that they spoke about the Son of God. So how does this all translate into relationships with people in a more intangible way that we can internalize for a little bit? How do we give the gift of love and it be just as rewarding for them as it is rewarding for us? Many would say the act of gift giving is love. It's a token of our appreciation for the receiver to spend and to enjoy. Last episode, we explored a few ways that loving people brings along risk, and it was a hearty episode, definitely a little heavy. We needed to explore that. We needed to explore that it's risky to have true love, and you have to submit to the risk of being hurt in order to find it. It's a given that it's possible, though it's not something that we have to will for ourselves that we'll be hurt. No one wants to be hurt, especially by someone that we genuinely care for. We are naturally, I think, as humans, risk averse in relationships. And I think that's mostly because heartbreak is imminent and it's painful. And to some degree, we all have experienced it and we want to survive, right? We've accepted that love is a high risk behavior, but it's not all doom and gloom. Last episode, you might have thought it was. We talked about the 2 risk factors that hold equal outcome. It just depends when taking a chance at loving others. Like most things, 1, evidence supports this idea that if you love someone, you could get hurt or worse. 2, which we will explore today, evidence supports this idea that if you love someone, you could become healed or better. Today, let's explore this restorative reward that loving someone can offer. Let's relate. Evidence supports this idea that if you love someone, you could be healed. Your wounds could be healed and you could become better. The gift of love is often looked at from the eyes of reception. Like I mentioned earlier, as a child, I loved how people honored me. It showed me that I was valued. I was important enough to be thought about. I was liked to a certain degree and loved to another. It showed me that people would take time to make sure that I had something that I wanted or that I needed. And that consideration in that form of a gift was definitely of high importance to them. That made me feel good. When I became financially capable and my age and mind had evolved a little bit in some years, I began to take on the responsibility and consideration of that person honoring others. It became more important for me to show my love and my attention through crafting these displays of gifts. Each year brought new obstacles to outdo the last year as sort of this kind of dual challenge for myself, gifting to outdo myself and make them feel more appreciated and more special, more and more and more, higher and higher and higher, better and better. If you start out big, you don't really have much to go. And that's pretty tough, right? For a bunch of people who have also, though, grown out receiving gifts. Now, I don't know if this is just an adult phenomenon. Perhaps it is. The reception is nice, but the giving is where it's at. And what it brought was me being challenged annually until I was able to figure out that it wasn't the gifts at all that my family wanted from me. It was the honoring of their personhood that ultimately made those people in my life feel my love. What that did for me, though, is it drew me back to find more intermittent ways to display my affections and not just wait for these really large moments like Christmas, like the New Year, birthdays, to honor them, especially when receiving gifts, because everybody's love language is not gift receiving, right? Some people, it's words of affirmation, like me. And at first, it felt like a slight. At first, I was like, oh man, they don't like my gifts, not even opening it. Like, what's going on? Like, I should have gone bigger. I should have maybe gotten them something more expensive, more tasteful or practical. I was taking it on myself that it was an issue that I had, and it was not an issue at all, actually. Trying to figure out why I would have, could have, and should have all over myself until the light bulb finally went off that we were the same, that we just enjoyed giving more. Many times we don't initially think of love this way when it comes to people. We think love is for us. And yes, love is for us, but love is also an act of service. It's an affirming word. It's time well spent and a consensual touch. It's their preferred way of being honored. It's more blessed to give than it is to receive. Acts 20:35. I saw a man, I think it was last week, help a woman who was asking for food on the side of the road. And I see this woman all the time. It was really wonderful to see this occurrence that happened. I had my window to my car cracked and I heard him scream out to her to come and get some food to eat. So she rushed over to him and she grabbed this large sandwich out of his hand. He had it inside of his truck. And she thankfully skipped on back to the grass and he yelled out again to her, come and grab a drink from the cooler in the bed of his truck. And so she ran to his truck, and it was all so fast, this transaction. She hopped up, grabbed a drink from the cooler, and thanked him for this provision as she walked back to the grassy knoll to partake. He wished her well. And as we all drove off, I was just smiling because I felt the love of someone who knows the importance of giving love to the measure of their need, not our need. He was happy to help, volunteering his provision for her to have, and his deed blessed him. Showing her love, though she could not return it to him, blessed him. Evidence supports this idea that if you love someone, you could be healed of your wounds or better. That man, who I don't know, taught me more about humanity than I knew the day before I saw that. He taught me that sacrifice can fill up my cup too. That act of him giving taught me that someone can watch me love someone else and be blessed by it too. It taught me that my historical context of love has been evolving, right? It's not only the bad stuff. I've been on my own personal journey, and I have been becoming more high risk for heartbreak, and it's not just one side. Evidence supports two sides. And when our ideals of love transcend our lived experiences, we find that love is not founded in what they can do for us. It truly is founded in what we can do for them. That is incredibly rewarding when you have the means to love someone the way they need to be loved. And I am still very much learning this, and each piece of evidence gathered is incredibly healing to me. So I'm not perfect at this. I'm not perfect at loving people the way that they need to be loved. This is still very much my work as well. But the reward is in the loving as much as it is in the receiving. When you experience love, your brain releases feel-good hormones, including dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin. These hormones enhance your mood and your overall sense of well-being. Dopamine, the reward hormone, reinforces the pleasure we feel from love and encourages us to seek more of these feelings. Oxytocin, the love hormone, promotes trust, connection, bonding with others. That was a quote from Nuvance Health. When you experience love, the pleasure that you get is so important that it creates a chemical response in your brain, causing you to seek out more of that feeling. We seek more opportunities for love, more rewards for love. The reward is in the loving just as much as it is in the receiving. Giving love and having the love reflected back to you is the benefit and the reward of loving others. While not everyone is capable at all times to receive the love you desire to give them, it's important to keep in mind that love is a necessity of life and not only a commodity. We should give cheerfully without reluctance. Like the woman on the side of the road and the man who gave, the reward stretched enough for the both of them. She had nothing to give him. His love stretched enough for both of them. Her thankfulness stretched enough for both of them. Love is the greatest commandment. God teaches us that to first love the Lord our God with all of our heart, all of our mind, and all of our soul. And then he says the second commandment and greatest commandment is to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. These are the two greatest commandments, and truly is all that we are fighting for in this life is love. They are also service commands, if you think about it. We love God through obeying his commandments. We love him through our heart, through our mind, through our soul. And then we love our neighbor as we already love ourselves, which is distinctly different, by the way, from the first commandment. Well, we won't cover that today. Loving your neighbor is an act of service. It may even be an act of sacrifice. Like the man with the truck and the sandwich and the drink, loving his neighbor, the woman in the grass, we are to give the gift of love, not only willingly from a place of, but from a place of satiation, right? We're to give from a place of sacrifice. He's going to be all good. He has it to give. We aren't looking to receive something back because then it becomes a transaction, which there is a space for that, I think, in love. But love is not predicated on that. There's a space for the transaction, but love is not predicated on that. How often can you say that you tell someone that you love them and be okay not hearing it back from them? With the exception of pets and babies, most times when we tell people we love them, we have this gut need for that I love you to be returned through the words that we gave to them. It's this gut feeling of needing your verbal vulnerability to be reciprocated so that you feel more safe and less like you were left hanging out on a ledge by them. If you are a gift giver, the feeling of watching, like I described earlier, like my nieces or my family, someone open a gift, a well thought out gift that you gave them, and it brings you satisfaction to your heart. There's nothing wrong with that. It validates your present heart posture, and that's beautiful. But it's also really telling about the purpose of the gift. Are we truly giving to love because we love, or are we giving to receive? If we all loved our neighbors as we loved ourselves, we would all be watering from a full cup. If you loved me and I loved you, our needs would be met. However, because a lot of the time we seek to fill our cup with the love of others, we don't know how to pour and not expect for it to be poured back into us. So when the commandment says, love your neighbor as yourself, you have to first pour from a full cup. You can't love them if you have nothing for yourself. A few weeks back, I had to check my heart posture because I have a habit of believing manners are important, and if not exercised, it's harmful to me. Par exemple, a man outside of Chipotle asked me for money, and I may have told this story, I can't remember. And I only had a credit card. And so I offered to buy him food, and he refused. So I came out after I'd gotten my food, and I felt really strong. I felt a strong desire to give to him. I wanted to give to this man, but I didn't have it to give in cash form. And so I ended up searching in my car for coins, and I found $1.50 in quarters. And I said to him, I have $1.50. And he said, that'll work. Then I gave it to him. And as I walked away, I feel ashamed to tell this story. As I walked away, he didn't say thank you. Now that's a mortal sin if you're from the South like me. Like, we don't play much about manners, okay, and honoring people out of habit, not heart. If you missed that, it's already gone. So when I sat in my car, I was thinking back. I was like, wow, he didn't even say thank you. God immediately convicted me. When I had that thought, I didn't even say it out loud. I had the thought, God immediately convicted me. He said, why do you need him to tell you thank you? Were you not giving from your heart? A full cup? Which heart did you give from? The one that needs its vulnerability to be validated through a thank you, words of affirmation? Or the heart following my command to love your neighbor? Now, he didn't say it all that. He just said, why do you need him? Why do you need him to say thank you? You already loved yourself by going up in Chipotle and getting a veggie bowl with guac and no extra charge. Why can't you love this man without the thank you? Hebrews 13:2 says, do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. Was that man an angel? I don't know. I don't think it matters if he was. It's my kindness and my heart posture that matters. What matters is that I loved him to his need, not mine. I asked him if he wanted food. He said no. The man wanted money. And if I'm in a space to give and my heart wants to give, I'll give to the degree of his need. Now, you probably can see both sides as me, honestly, and I still do think that he should have said thank you, okay? But that realization was really beautiful for me because I didn't want to I wanted to give to him, right? That's why I offered, and that's why I went another mile to try to find money for him. I was prepared to help, but it's those small things, the small things in your heart posture that can maximally shift your heart posture if you allow God to shift you. And it'll shift how you do relationships with people. It'll shift how you love people. God is still working on me. And maybe I will get to the point where that thank you is unnecessary for me to hear because my service is fulfilled by obeying God's command first and only. So let's seal this episode up with a couple of simple and practical ways to begin exercising that muscle of creating contentment while we are in the act of loving our neighbors. First, tell someone you love them. In fact, tell a bunch of someones that you love them. If you feel weird doing that and you get that gut feeling, then you know there's work to do. There's work to do on your heart to be able to tell someone that you do love, that you love them without the need to hear it back. Tell them at random, call them right now, send them a text, and don't say love you, say I love you. You can do this without the need for it to be reciprocated. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but it doesn't have to be for it to be real. Number 2, do a random act of kindness like pick up trash from a neighbor's yard or something of the like without telling them. Just do the random act without announcing it. Number 3, pay it forward. I like to do this around the holiday season. Buy a $5 gift card for a shopper behind you or somebody behind you in the drive-thru. Pay for their meal. Pay for the meal of another patron if you have the ability to. I know we don't always have the ability to, especially in this economy. But if you could throw some money at it, hey, I want to tip this waitress or waiter extra. I want to, whatever it might be. Start stretching your heart muscle so that you can rebuild it in the right way. You will find that the more you exercise this type of gift giving, right? Giving up your love to others without the need for reciprocity, the need for it. You don't need it. Sure, we want it and it is ideal if we have it, but we don't need it. But the more we begin to stretch that, the easier it becomes to be vulnerable and to release the heartbreak. The more it becomes easier to be vulnerable and to release and understand that heartbreak is inevitable, but it's not going to kill us. If you're loving your neighbor and they are loving you, ideally both of you are receiving a surplus because you already loved yourself. So fill up your cup, then pour from it. And I promise you that you won't miss that thank you. You won't need the returned favor. Evidence supports this idea that if you love someone else, you could get hurt. And equally, but opposite, loving someone else could be the healing that you need. Love is a risk and a reward. Thank you for loving yourself first, so you can then go and love your neighbor. Until next time.
Why don't you stay a little longer? You like what you like, right? Subscribe to the channel so we can spend a little more time together. And maybe comment your thoughts because I care what you're thinking. Love is the risk and the reward.